I think we can begin now.
All right, so I think we can already start.
Yes, I invite Professor Rovina to formally open this lecture and introduce the today's lecturer, Dr. Evelie. So I hand over to Professor Rovina, please.
Shall we start, Dr. I'm sorry, our argument?
Yes, please, please. Please go
Good
ahead.
evening. Okay, thank you. Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Arjament, of course, for inviting us here. And we are very happy. No? The College of Public Affairs and Development, through the Institute for Governance and Rural Development, is very happy to partner with the Grassroots Institute Global Lectures, with the Grassroots Institute for Global Lectures, and we're very happy to be part of this event. I can see that we have a lot of participants from all over the country. So good evening, everyone, and we are very excited to be here tonight to share our thoughts regarding this very important topic on how the pandemic has impacted on our mental health. Of course, we've been through this situation for over more than 2 years already, right? This pandemic has been with us for quite some time. It has affected us in a lot of ways, especially all of the academic institutions have dealt with it. Overnight, we have changed the way we deliver our lectures, and because of that, the restrictions that we have to undergo and the major changes that we had to deal with, a lot of people have been affected by it in a lot of ways, and one of these is the effect on our mental health. So it has affected not only the teachers, but also our students, right? And we see students who have been unable to cope with this event primarily because of the isolation. And as a result, our role as educators, our role as community development workers have enlarged in effect, because we have to take care of the mental health as well of our major stakeholders, who are the community members and also our students. So Dr. Serrano is very happy to share with you her thoughts regarding this very important occurrence that we have to deal with. And she's also going to discuss with us what are the policy implications of all of these things. So I'm not going to discuss this in a lengthy way, but I would like to, of course, appreciate everyone for being here and appreciate the Institute for inviting us and being a partner of this event. So with that, I would like to introduce Dr. Serrano, who's going to be our speaker for this event. So Dr. Serrano is an associate professor and the director of the Institute for Governance and Rural Development of the College of Public Affairs and Development, University of the Philippines, Los Baños. She is a full-fledged UPLB alumna, having finished BS Development Communication major in Science Communication, Master in Public Affairs, major in Education Management, and PhD in Extension Education at UPLB. As an educator, she has handled undergraduate and graduate courses in education and extension, including education psychology, advanced educational psychology, advanced social psychology, sociology of education, and international comparative education. With these backgrounds, She is very well equipped to discuss our topic for tonight. Dr. Serrano has authored and co-authored journal articles on education, extension, and development, and has received Best Paper Awards in international and national academic conferences. A recipient of the 2019-2021 One Faculty Grant Award for Outstanding Teaching and Public Service, Dr. Serrano, an excellent communicator, has developed and facilitated a number of training workshops and learning sessions related to education, extension, and research. Dr. Serrano?
Thank you very much, Dean Bocongis. So thank you for joining us today, the Dean of the College of Public Affairs and Development, University of the Philippines, Los Baños. Thank you, Ma'am Weng, for the introduction, for that kind introduction. Before I start, I would like to thank also Dr. Hazrat Arjamend and the Grassroots Institute for this opportunity to talk about the psychological impact of COVID-19 pandemic from the perspective of an education manager and educator. Also, I would like to thank my colleagues, first and foremost, Dr. Rowena Bacongis, and then I can see here Dr. Monica Wallet, another colleague, and my future colleague of ours, Mr. Ray Chang, Professor Ray Chang, hello. And and to all the other Zoom participants, thank you very much for joining us. It's evening now in the Philippines. So yeah, good evening from the Philippines. So most likely you are here because you can very much relate to the topic, given that we are in one way or the other all struggling to thrive in this global pandemic. So let me share now my screen, my slides. So one moment. All right, so okay. So I'm happy to share my thoughts on the psychological impact of COVID-19 pandemic. So I'll be sharing with you my insights and yes, some policy recommendations. So as we know, the corona disease 2019, or more popularly known as COVID-19 pandemic, has subjected mental and the mental health and the well-being of people under drastic conditions. So endangering the lives of people, the COVID-19 pandemic has resulted to increased anxiety and mental health problems among people. Now, with the absence of a unified, comprehensive strategies in mitigating the deterioration of mental health, we can expect that many people will continue to endure mental health problems. Accordingly, we can also expect a mental health epidemic for years to come. So in this lecture, I will discuss the psychological impact of COVID-19 pandemic among university students and offer insights and policy recommendations to help address the effects of the pandemic on students' psychological well-being. So let me move forward, to my next slide. So this presentation is divided into two parts. So I'll be talking first about the psychological impact of COVID-19 pandemic. So I'll be sharing with you some related literature and then the implications, to education. And then the next part, would be about our way forward. So here, I'll be sharing with you how we should proceed, what should be done, and then this is where I will share, my policy recommendations, so this would be my presentation outline. To continue, all right. So as we know, the 2019 coronavirus disease, or COVID-19, was declared a pandemic by the World Health Organization, or WHO, in March 2020. And as we also know, it has created the largest disruption of education systems in human history affecting nearly 1.6 billion, okay, learners in more than 200 countries. So this pandemic has brought far-reaching changes in all aspects, okay, of our lives. And we are all proof to, we can all relate to this. Okay, so we are proof to this that yes, the pandemic has really affected, okay, our lives in many ways. So social distancing and the restrictive movement policies have significantly, okay, disturbed traditional educational practices. So as mentioned by Dean Bocongis earlier, there have been changes on how we facilitate learning, okay, because of the pandemic. So some of us have shifted to flexible learning, to remote learning, some to online learning, to hybrid learning. Okay, so it has the pandemic has changed, okay, how we approach, okay, teaching and learning. And the reopening of schools, okay, let me go back. Oops, sorry. Let me, right. So the reopening of schools after the relaxation of restriction is another challenge, okay, with many new standard operating procedures put in place. Okay, so we are actually in the process of, in our case, we are still struggling on how we can return, okay, to face-to-face learning. So the reopening of schools is a struggle, especially for us in developing countries. Okay, so moving forward. So following a series of series of school and university closures, so there was an imminent, okay, and compelling need to shift, okay, the modality of instruction. So from face to face, okay, so we have transition, okay, to online learning, okay, or a combination of online, okay, and face-to-face learning for some countries now. So we have shifted the modality of instruction from a physical environment, so from face-to-face learning, to an online, okay, digital world of teaching and learning. And because of these changes, okay, so not everyone, of course, can easily cope, okay, with these changes. And so with that, okay, many students and even teachers had to struggle, okay. And so before we proceed, okay, with my presentation, so I would like you to answer, okay, this question. So how did or do you find, if you're still, okay, in remote learning, so how did or do you find remote or flexible learning during the pandemic? So I would like to hear your thoughts, your experiences, that is, and I would like you to type, okay, to share your experiences, okay, in Mentimeter. So please go to www.menti.com and use the code 89888100. So please take note of the code, or alternatively, you may use this QR code. So I'll return first to the code, and then later, once you have noted it, you may use also the QR code that I'll be sharing. So again, please answer the question, how did or do you find remote or flexible learning during the pandemic? What was your experience? I would like to know. So please go to www.menti.com and use the code 89888100. So I hope you got the code. And then alternatively, you may use this QR code. So just scan this QR code. This would lead you to menti.com. So I'll give you a few minutes, okay, to type your answers. All right, so let me stop share and let me go to menti.com. So again, I hope you got the QR code. So stop share and let's go to Mentimeter. Okay, so So please go to www.menti.com and use the code 89888100. So how do or did you find remote or flexible learning during the pandemic? What was your experience with remote learning or flexible learning? So I would love to hear your experiences. So we have one response already. I hope the others can type their responses. Okay, so again, please go to www.menti.com and use the code 89888100. So if you have your mobile phone with you, your tablet, or you can use your computer. Okay, so please go to www.menti.com. Okay, so I hope I can see more responses. Maybe last 1 minute to type your responses. Okay, very good. Thank you. So we have 3 responses now. Okay, so I guess the others cannot type their responses, but yeah, you can still answer later on. So if there is something common among the answers here, it would definitely be the word challenging, right? So yeah, for some it's challenging, but as noted here, there are also opportunities, right? And so while we struggle, okay, with flexible and remote learning, we also recognize, okay, that there are also opportunities, okay, in this kind of learning approach. Now, for those who are challenged, okay, it's good if we are able to manage, okay, these challenges. But for some people, they find it difficult, okay, to manage, okay, these challenges. And so they experience, okay, stress, anxiety, which eventually leads, okay, to problems, okay, in their mental health. So let me stop share and let me go back, okay, to my presentation. All right. So the innately motivated learners are relatively unaffected in their learning, as they need minimum, okay, supervision and guidance. And that's why while others, find it challenging, still they were able to navigate, okay, the remote learning setup just fine, okay, because maybe aside from being really motivated to learn, they also have the resources needed, okay, to learn. However, there are people who are not as fortunate, okay? So there are the vulnerable groups, okay, consisting of students who are either weak in learning, okay, or have limited resources. And so these students, okay, face difficulties that sometimes are beyond, okay, their control, or beyond their um, problems that they find really difficult, okay, or challenging, okay, to overcome. And so while there are those who find it easy, okay, the remote learning setup. Okay, some academically competent learners from economically disadvantaged background are unable, okay, to access and afford online learning. So while they are motivated to learn, but as I have said, they may not have the resources, okay, needed, okay, to learn. And so they experience, okay, stress, okay, and anxiety, which would lead now, okay, to, of course, um, uh, problems, okay, in their mental health. Okay, so mental health, okay, and well-being issues on university campuses are on the rise. So for years now, so we have already recognized, okay, the importance of mental health and well-being. But then when the pandemic happened, okay, so the issues, okay, on mental health and well-being, okay, were magnified, okay, during the pandemic. So in just 6 years, this includes the years that we are experiencing the pandemic. So in just 6 years, student anxiety in higher education institutions jumped from 17% to 31%. So that's a huge leap, okay? So according to a study by the Healthy Minds Network and the American College Association. So mental health problems, okay, are rising, okay, in university campuses. They're already there before, but then because of the pandemic, okay, these issues, okay, these problems, okay, were magnified. Okay, so during the pandemic. And according to the Philippine National Statistics Office, or NSO, mental health illnesses rank as the third most common form of morbidity among Filipinos. So it's that big of a problem, okay, here in the Philippines, especially during this time of pandemic. So a lot of our students are struggling, okay, with their mental health. And not just the students, but also the faculty members and even the university staff. Okay, so they're having problems, okay, with their mental health. Okay, so um, with that, okay, so the global pandemic and health crisis have led to an increased rate of anxiety or depression. And I think we can all relate to this. Okay, so most probably we have friends, okay, or if you are a teacher, you have students, okay, um, who have asked for your help, or who may have um, told you about his or her, okay, mental health problems. Okay, so everyone, okay, has experienced it, okay, in one way or the other. Okay, so the global pandemic and health crisis have led to an increased rate of anxiety or depression, and also, okay, financial instability among university students, which um, is one of the causes, okay, of their anxiety or depression. Okay, so many are stressed out because of the pandemic. A lot of people lost their jobs, and so a lot of our students, okay, experience, okay, financial instability. And I think it's no different, okay, in most countries, okay, because we all struggled, okay, during this pandemic. And yeah, so last semester, um, my advanced educational psychology class explored the psychological impact of COVID-19 pandemic among graduate students, okay, in our college. And my students, okay, were able to note the struggle, okay, of graduate students. So I'll be sharing with you some snippets, okay, from their interviews, okay, with these online interviews, okay, with our graduate students. And this is a response, okay, from one of the graduate students, which proves that indeed, okay, this health crisis that we are experiencing right now has increased, okay, the rate of anxiety, okay, or depression among university students. So one of the research participants said Due to the pandemic, prices and basic needs of my family, such as medicine, electricity, water supply, and food, among others, have started to increase. So this proves that there is financial instability, which leads now, okay, to anxiety, stress, or depression, okay, among graduate students. And students, okay, also reported, according to another study, reported greater psychological impact as well as more depressive anxiety and stress symptoms compared to those who are employed. So if we employees were struggling, okay, during the pandemic, so the students, okay, based on the study of T et al. In 2020, reported greater psychological impact, okay, as well as more depressive anxiety and stress symptoms as compared to us who are working. So we may attribute this, of course, to the lack of uh, opportunities to socialize, okay, because we are all for the first months of the pandemic, we were under lockdown, and so they're not allowed to go out. And of course, your college days, traditionally, okay, these are the times wherein you really establish, you know, your friendships and all that. So it was difficult for many students. And aside from that, okay, many families, okay, had to struggle, okay, with the impact of the pandemic on their sources, okay, of income. So parents have lost their jobs, and so some students had to struggle, okay, with school. Some even had to stop schooling altogether because the family, okay, could not afford anymore to send the child to school. So there are cases like that here in the Philippines. So moving forward, so just to share, okay, another quotation from the research that I just did. One of the respondents or one of the research participants said that it worries and bothers me a lot when I'm thinking of other problems too. So I cannot focus and do them properly. Okay, so this was their experience, okay, during the pandemic, which shows that there really is students really struggled, okay, and there was a higher rate or a higher rate of anxiety, okay, and then more stress, okay, for the students during the pandemic. And aside from that, okay, so one student even shared that I worry about the online academic requirements this semester. I have so many requirements that they pile up at once. I'm always afraid of not meeting the standards, okay, which supports what was mentioned earlier, that students, okay, tend to have greater, you know, psychological impact. Okay, so anxiety, they experience a lot of anxiety. They show stress symptoms. So from their answers, we can already feel, okay, their stress. All right. So these were the struggles, okay, of our graduate students, okay, um, last semester. So meanwhile, okay, in another study, so online academic requirements were considered the primary cause of anxiety among graduate, okay, students. So higher educational institutions and teachers in the Philippines have shifted from traditional face-to-face instruction to remote learning. And because of that, sometimes it's difficult for the students to cope with all the changes, okay, happening. And so one of the causes of their anxiety, okay, are the online academic requirements. Many of our students have to struggle with poor internet connectivity. Others don't have, you know, they don't have stable internet. Others don't have the necessary gadgets or equipment. And so this brings a lot of stress and anxiety, okay, to our students when we shifted from traditional face-to-face instruction to remote learning. And so in that same study that my students did, one of the research participants said, I find it hard to manage and complete all the requirements while assisting my kids, because these are graduate students, okay, who are also doing their requirements online. So it was really It was difficult for students, and more so for graduate students, okay, who also have to work and have to take care of their children. So it was really a difficult time. And last semester, while they have already somehow adjusted, still they were experiencing these difficulties. Okay, so what are now the implications of all this, okay, to education? So moving on, untreated or inadequately treated mental illness is associated with progression to more complex disorders. So these stress and anxiety that the students are experiencing can lead to more complex, okay, disorders. Now, worse, students, okay, may opt to drop out because they can no longer manage, okay, the challenges of uh, teaching and learning, okay, during the pandemic. And others may resort to addiction, okay, others would end up drinking, to distress, okay, so they may experience addiction. And others, okay, could even harm themselves, okay, end up harming themselves. So untreated or inadequately treated mental illness can, lead to something more destructive. Okay, so students can develop more complex disorders, as mentioned here again, so they can end up dropping out. This happened, okay, with a few of our students. Some had to file for leave of absence because they cannot cope with the demands of graduate school and also their work. Okay, and there were also reports, okay, of self-harm when the students can no longer control themselves, okay, and their stress, their anxiety. Okay, so all of these things can lead to something, worse. And so yeah, so it's a challenge, okay, for many of us in the education sector. However, the good news is, okay, um a lot of schools, okay, have recognized, okay, the need for us to give importance, okay, to mental health. Okay, so campuses that show dedication to student well-being can help increase academic performance, retention, and graduation rates. So good for these universities or schools because their efforts, okay, would lead to something good. Okay, could even help improve academic performance of students, retention of students, and even improve or increase the graduation rates. So university students who have greater sense of well-being and belonging tend to have higher motivation. And this has been proven, okay, by researchers. And aside from that, they have increased self-confidence, higher levels of engagement and achievement. So these students also show better cultural awareness, enhanced critical thinking, higher levels of community service, and they are more likely, okay, to be sympathetic citizens. So there really is much that we can benefit if we care for the mental health of our students. And it's good that schools nowadays recognize, right, the importance, okay, of mental health. Nevertheless, as we know, okay, the problem is still there. Okay, so much work still has to be done, okay, to overcome this challenge on mental health. Okay, so universities, as the way forward, should take a lead role in the development of an integrated system of student mental health care. So while higher education leaders have put measures, okay, in place to help stem the tide, much work, as I have said earlier, needs to be done. So while this is considered top priority for many school leaders, effort still has, okay, to be made as many continue to suffer mentally, okay, during the pandemic. Okay, so in our case here in the university, there's still a lot of reports, okay, of students who are struggling, okay, with their mental health. Just this morning, one of my colleagues asked me, okay, how we would what's this, connect our students, okay, to the proper what's this, office. Okay, so there's one student that is struggling with her mental health and is seeking help. Okay, so it's still there. And as long as COVID is still there, okay, um, yeah, it will continue to affect our day-to-day lives. Maybe not as much as before, okay, when there were no vaccines, but in one way, okay, or the other, its impact, particularly on our mental health, can still be very much felt. So it's still there. Okay. And with that, given that that is the scenario, so we in universities, okay, need to take a lead role in the development of an integrated system of student mental health care. So we have to give importance, okay, to our students' mental health. And also, so we need to allow, okay, our students to thrive, to allow our students, that is, to thrive academically. So we need to promote wellness, okay, and foster campus cultures that prioritize well-being as a value. So stigmas, okay, because there are a lot of stigmas behind mental health issues. So in the Philippines, for example, before, when you have mental health issues, that means there's something wrong with you. So people would not really say so much, okay, about their mental health. When they're struggling, when they have problems, when they have anxieties, they tend to keep them to themselves, because it's not that there are stigmas, okay, that go with it, unlike, for example, in first world countries, that you can easily go to the psychologist, you can easily go to the counselor. But here it's not the same. So culturally, okay, we also have to overcome that issue, okay, because yeah, it's not really that accepted before. Okay, so yeah, as I was saying, so stigmas behind mental health issues must be removed. Okay, and in the case of our college, okay, we have done several webinars, okay, on promoting mental health among students and also among faculty, okay, and staff. All right, so this is just one example. So sometimes we would have sessions, okay, counseling sessions, okay, so that we can offer support, okay, to our students. So that one is very important. And what else? Aside from that, okay, there should be mechanisms, okay, that promote self-care and good mental health, okay, such as wellness breaks. Okay, so these wellness breaks should be provided to both students, faculty members, and even, okay, to support staff. So for us here in the university, so the University of the Philippines, Los Baños, and even in the whole UP system. Okay, so the UP system provides, okay, reading and wellness breaks, okay, for students. So for them to have a break, okay, so this is usually in the middle of the semester, so that they can recharge, because we recognize that it can be really tough, okay, for students. It can be really taxing. Online learning can be difficult for many of our students who don't have the resources needed for to really have to be able to really engage, okay, in the learning situation. So because of these lack of resources, so many of them experience, okay, stress and anxiety. And so the UP system, the University of the Philippines, the National University, okay, here in the Philippines, has provided, okay, wellness breaks. So it's part of our academic calendar already. So as you can see here, so there's an announcement, an advisory. Okay, so there. All right. So yeah, so to continue, so going back to the sharing, okay, of our graduate students, okay, during the research that my students did, one of the students mentioned that um, I do wish to have in-person classes for better learning absorption and focus. Often I juggle the three shifts. It's only in the past 2 weeks that I availed myself of personal leave from work, but it's also the time for writing school-related papers, and I still felt like I was so slow. So this response shows that there really is a need, okay, for wellness breaks. So we have to recognize, okay, that students, okay, also need, okay, a break, okay, so that they can recharge, and also the faculty members. It's also a time for them, to recharge, okay, so having no classes, all right, and do other things. Okay, so and aside from that, so aside from these mechanisms, okay, to promote good mental health, okay, we also need, okay, to innovate, all right, and more so to implement, okay, alternative educational systems, because it's so easy, to recommend, okay, strategies, but yeah, we have to um, be able to implement, okay, these alternative educational systems, and even these alternative assessment strategies. So in the context of teaching and learning, the COVID-19 pandemic has provided us with the opportunity, okay, to pave the way for introducing digital learning. However, okay, so what works for one may not necessarily work for another. So we need to explore other ways by which we can facilitate teaching and assess learning. And hence, okay, this way forward, okay, the need for us to innovate and implement alternative educational systems and assessment strategies. And so, having said that, so these are, okay, some policy recommendations. So thinking about it, in the context of education, responding to the impacts of the pandemic on mental health requires ensuring the effective delivery of education. Okay, so aside from targeting, okay, our students' mental health and making sure that we have the necessary interventions and the necessary support, we have to make sure that we also ensure effective delivery of education, because this is one of the sources of our students' stress. So if we cannot respond to the challenges of the pandemic in education, so we will continue to expect students, okay, and even teachers, okay, with high level of stress and anxiety. So accordingly, the following policy recommendations are forwarded as adopted from the United Nations Policy Brief on Education during the COVID-19 and beyond. So here are just some recommendations by which we can help improve, okay, the delivery of education, which could contribute, okay, to um, the improvement, okay, in the mental health, okay, and even the overall well-being, okay, of our students. So one is, okay, to suppress transmission of the virus and plan thoroughly for schools and reopening. So we'll talk more about this later. And then another is to strengthen, okay, the resilience of education systems for equitable and sustainable development. So basically, yeah, to strengthen, okay, the resilience of our education systems. And important is for us to reimagine education, to reframe education, and accelerate positive change in teaching and learning. So if we get to respond, okay, to these challenges, okay, we get to minimize, we hopefully we'll be able to minimize, okay, the stress, okay, that our students are experiencing. Okay, so let us talk about okay, the first one, which is suppressing the transmission of the virus and planning thoroughly for schools reopening. We are in the process of we are preparing, okay, for the reopening of the university. Right now, we only have limited face-to-face classes for um, a number of students. Okay, so but the university, we're actually one of, well, the Philippines is one of the, I don't know if we're the remaining country that has really transitioned back, that has yet to transition back to face learning. And so right now the university is still preparing, okay, for limited face-to-face classes during the mid-year. And so this is something that we really need to think about, okay? And yeah, first and foremost, we have to ensure the safety of all, because one of the stressors for our students is, you know, that fear that they might acquire the virus. So at least now that most of us, okay, have vaccines and even booster shots, so at least that stress, okay, the stress from thinking of that has already lessened. Nonetheless, okay, we have to make sure that our students and even our faculty members, okay, are safe. Okay, so also, um, yeah, according to the United Nations, the needs of the most marginalized, okay, should be included, okay, in the reopening strategies, and adequate health measures need to be provided for those with special needs. And so when we reopen our schools, we have to plan not just for the reopening of the schools, but for inclusive reopening of our schools, and conducting assessments, okay, to estimate learning gaps and prepare remedial or accelerated learning programs is also essential, okay, at the time of the reopening. And very important as we, you know, prepare for the reopening of our schools is to listen, okay, to the voices of all concerned. So on listening to the voices of all concerned, so our university, for example, makes it a point, okay, to hold consultations with its stakeholders. So from the time we shifted to remote learning to now, when we are transitioning to limited face-to-face classes, the university has continuously, you know, conducted consultations with students, with faculty members. So it's good to learn, okay, the concerns of students, okay, and faculty, of students, of both faculty and students, to ensure that our interventions, our approach, okay, respond, okay, to their needs, and are appropriate, okay, to their situation. And as we, of course, reopen our schools, we need to coordinate with key actors, including the health community. So it's very important that we work, okay, with the other stakeholders. Now, as regards strengthening the resilience of education system, so we need to focus on equity, okay, and inclusion. So according to the UN, to build back resilient and reach all learners, okay, so we need to understand and address, okay, the needs of the marginalized groups, okay, and make sure that they receive quality, okay, education. And this, of course, requires strong leadership and coordination. So the multitude of actors, we have a lot of actors, okay, working together. So as they respond, okay, to and mitigate the impact of the crisis, so this can lead to duplication, to inefficiency, and even to confusion, so without strong leadership and coordination. So this one is very important. And we also have to enhance, okay, our consultation and communication mechanisms. So strong coordination, okay, coordination mechanisms are needed, okay, to maximize the inputs of all stakeholders. And finally, okay, so there is a need for us to rethink education, okay, and accelerate positive change in teaching and learning. So what do we need to do then? Okay, so we need to focus on addressing learning losses and preventing dropouts. Okay, so as our students struggle with their mental health, okay, so they experience, okay, learning loss. That's one of the impacts, okay, of the pandemic, okay, to education, learning loss. And then there's also the issue of dropout. Okay, so we have to focus on these things. And there has to be, okay, support, okay, to the teaching profession and the learner's readiness. So on supporting the teacher's profession, we should keep in mind that technology alone is not a guarantee of good learning outcomes. So more important than training teachers, okay, in ICT skills is assuring that they have the assessment and the pedagogical skills to meet students' needs. So if we fail to meet students' needs, that's where the problem comes in, right? So students would feel anxious, they would feel stressed, okay, because we're not catering, okay, to their needs. We're not empathetic, okay, of their situation. And so they experience, okay, mental health problems because of that. So meanwhile, okay, in the research, okay, of my advanced educational psychology class, so my students found out that um, unstable, okay, internet connection serves as one of the main sources of anxiety among graduate students. And yeah, so because of this, right? So we really have to prioritize, okay, connectivity with our students. So we have to remove these barriers, okay, to connectivity. So according to the findings, okay, of my students, the level of anxiety of students with unstable internet connection, okay, is twice that of students with stable internet connection. And this finding supports earlier findings of other researchers. So with that, it is imperative, okay, that we find ways to improve connectivity. So internet connection in campus, as we shift, okay, to hybrid learning, should be reliable. Because I think that's the struggle of many students here in the Philippines. So they have poor internet connection. And then when they return to campus for face-to-face classes, there's also for limited face-to-face classes, which may require also hybrid learning. So they also don't have, okay, access to good internet connection. So that can be really, stressful, okay, for our students. Okay, and yeah, finally, okay, flexibility. So for me, flexibility remains the key, okay, to success, okay, in education during this pandemic. So there is a need for us to strengthen, okay, flexibility. So educational institutions should continue to employ flexible learning approaches, okay, in consideration of the needs of our diverse set of learners. So we have a diverse here in the University of the Philippines. So we have a diverse set of learners. We have a lot of students from marginalized communities, from poor families, and they really struggle, okay, during this remote learning setup, okay, and we have proven that by being flexible, okay, so we get to address, okay, the needs of our students, and this has been helpful, okay, in to our students, okay, who are struggling, okay, in this setup, this current remote learning setup. So faculty members have been extra considerate, even the way we grade our students, okay. So even the requirements, we had to adjust our requirements. Our course outlines, okay, we made sure that only the essential, okay, topics are there. And so we also redesigned basically how we teach the courses. So in consideration of the situation, the pandemic situation, and also the needs, okay, and resources of our students. So flexibility, I believe, has been the key, okay, to successful teaching and learning in this time of pandemic. And so there's a need for us educators, okay, and education managers even to strengthen, okay, flexibility. All right. Okay. So before we proceed, okay, to my conclusions, all right. So I have here another set of questions, just two questions that I'd like you to answer quickly. So before we end, okay, so what are your key takeaways and how should your institution, based on what I have shared with you, reflecting on what I have shared, how should your institution respond, okay, to the psychological impact of the pandemic? Because we are in different situations. Maybe my recommendations, okay, are not appropriate given our different, okay, contexts. So thinking about reflecting on what I have shared with you so far, how should your institution respond, okay, to the psychological impact of the pandemic? If you're in the university, if you're in the academy, okay, or maybe if you are a student or a graduate student, okay, so I would like to hear your thoughts. So again, okay, please go to www.menti.com and use the code 82657284. So again, the code is 82657284. So I'll flash this for a few moments so that you can take note of the code. So it's 82657284. And then alternatively, you may also use this QR code. Okay, so simply scan this if you have your phone with you. Okay, just scan the QR code and this would lead you, okay, to menti.com. So again, these are the questions that you need to answer. What are your key takeaways and how should your institution respond, okay, to the psychological impact of the pandemic? So again, you may use this code. Sorry. This is the code 82657284. And then alternatively, you may use this QR code. Just scan it, okay, using your phone. So let me stop share so that I can go to mentimeter.com. So let me share here. Oops. So one moment, I need to open mentimeter.com again. Excellent. All right, so I have two responses here. I hope I can hear from the others. What are your key takeaways, okay, from this presentation? And thinking about, okay, what has been shared so far, how should your institution respond to the psychological impact of the pandemic? So we are from different countries, okay, and we may have different contexts, okay, or situations. So I would love to hear, okay, your thoughts on how our institutions, educational institutions, should respond, okay, to the psychological impact of the pandemic. Okay, so thank you very much to those who have responded so far. Maybe let's give the others a minute or two to complete their responses. Okay, so I think everyone is, all right. So let me read some of the responses here. Okay, so enhance courage among teachers and learners. This one is very good, as well as grit. Yes, grit is important. Okay, as we struggle. Okay, in this time of pandemic, so we have to find ways on how we can develop that among our teachers and learners. Also being caring and ensuring that learners are in a safe learning environment. Yes, when our students feel that uh, they are in a safe environment, okay, so they become more of course comfortable, okay, and with that it's easier for them to open themselves to learning, okay, when they feel that they are safe and secure. So this one lessens, okay, the anxiety, because sometimes in for our undergraduate students, they they don't really participate that actively sometimes because they're afraid that they would be judged when they speak, so they feel anxious, okay, and so as educators, as teachers, we have to create that safe learning environment wherein everyone feels welcome, okay, to share their ideas, okay, and then to participate, actively in different class activities. So it's one of the challenges, okay, of to educators, but it's something that can really improve, okay, teaching and learning in the class if the students feel safe. So chances are they would participate more actively, okay, in class. And then flexibility, yes, okay, so it's very important, okay, that we are flexible in terms of not just in terms of delivery, but also um, in terms of redesigning, okay, the curriculum, and also the courses that we are teaching, the content. Okay, so yes, I agree that we focus on the key competencies as long as the learning outcomes are being met, okay, by these topics. I don't think there's anything wrong, okay, by with focusing, okay, on the essentials. Okay, so focus on the key competencies, especially during this time, because this is not normal times. Okay, and as mentioned here, there seems to be a lack of context to be realized by shareholders such as investors for private universities or government spending for state institutions. Therefore, I think that more research and investment, okay, are appropriate to better present. Okay, so I think, yeah, it wasn't, the answer is incomplete, but I get the point. Okay, research, okay, is important. And yes, government and other stakeholders should invest more, okay, on education. So given that we all recognize how important education is, okay, so we need to invest more, okay, on education. What else? Higher education institution. Podilya State University in Ukraine has organized psychological center for both students and teachers. Wow, this is good. So they can get psychological support from an expert. Yes, in these difficult times, okay, it's very good if we have these psychological centers, okay, or at least we have guidance counseling, okay, centers in our universities to offer support, okay, not just to students but also teachers, because yes, even our teachers, okay, struggle during this pandemic. So they all have, we also experience mental health problems, and so we have to be able to provide the support that our faculty members need. So just earlier in one of our meetings with our colleagues from a university in Japan, so we were asking one another, do your teachers also experience mental health problems? And they said yes, because the tendency for some Japanese professors, they keep to themselves. They don't really talk much, and so yeah, they experience also mental health problems. Okay, because they tend to keep, okay, their difficulties, okay, to themselves. And I think I've also seen that among our faculty members here. We struggle, we also struggle, okay, we have to adjust to our new learning environment. We had to adjust to that, and it was really difficult. So it's good that the university also provides, okay, these similar intervention as the Podilya State University in Ukraine. So yes, this one is very good. What else? Yeah, okay. So lastly, all right, learn the importance of mitigating stigma to encourage students or teachers to start the conversation. Yes, this is very important, especially in countries or maybe communities wherein mental health is not really, talked about. So it's time that we remove the stigma. Okay, so we have to keep the conversation going. So we have to have conversations like this wherein we talk about, okay, the implications of mental health. Okay, because these problems, these issues exist. And unless we do something about it, unless we talk about it, recognize that there is a problem, then it would continue, okay, to haunt, okay, to haunt our students and even our teachers who are struggling, okay, with their mental health. So there's a need for us to break the stigma, okay, and talk more about the importance, okay, of mental health, good mental health, and well-being. Okay, so thank you very much for those who shared, okay, their thoughts and ideas. So let me stop share and then let me go back, okay, to my screen, to my slides. That is, where are my slides? Here it is. Why can't I see my slides? Wait, give me one moment. Let me just stop share. Okay, here we go. This is one of the difficulties of online. All right, so shifting from one screen to another. So let me continue. All right. Okay, so to conclude, all right, so unless education leaders and school administrators make education accessible, okay, equitable, flexible, and responsive, so it would be difficult for us to address the psychological impact of the pandemic. So we have to work on education. We have to work on our delivery. Okay, we have to work on responding, okay, to the needs of our students and our faculty members and even our support staff. Okay, so it would be difficult for us to address the psychological impact of the pandemic unless, okay, we make education again accessible, equitable, flexible, and responsive. Unless we improve it, okay, it would be extra challenging for us, okay, to solve, okay, the psychological, to overcome, okay, or at least minimize, okay, the psychological impact of the pandemic, as some anxieties, okay, are caused by poor management and delivery of education. Okay, so we really have to work on improving how we deliver, okay, education. And moreover, there is a need for us to increase, okay, the awareness, increase awareness, okay, on the importance of public mental health. Accordingly, there should be more conversations. As mentioned earlier, there should be more conversations and more programs, okay, that will break the stigma of mental health. So to end this presentation, let me leave you with a quote from our health secretary. He said, the importance of mental health initiatives is just as crucial as those for the COVID-19 pandemic. Now more than ever, we need to promote holistic health where we are caring for the body, mind, and even the spirit. So with that, I end my presentation and I'm now ready to answer your questions if you have any.
Thank you, doctor. Please stop sharing this slide.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, good. So we invite the audience for their questions. Please come forward.
Dear Evelie Serrano, Dr. Evelie Serrano, so
Yes.
thank you for your lecture. It was both informative and interesting, and you are a real expert in your field. We are teachers and students of higher educational institution, Podillia State University in Ukraine. And so we were pleased to hear that you participate different scientific events and your papers are or have been awarded by scientific community. And we came to a conclusion that we have a lot to do together. We can provide joint projects and conferences because, frankly speaking, the issue of psychological impact of a pandemic is not relevant anymore in Ukraine, because now we live, work, and study in the period of war. And to my mind, such question as psychological impact of war on learning and teaching can be the next maybe point of interest in your scientific research. So, and I would like to hear, do you have any recommendations? How can we, so the institution can help the students and the teachers in such a difficult period when we have war in our country?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. And that's I can just imagine the difficulty that you are experiencing right now. So for us, we're struggling with our war is with the pandemic, but for you, you also have to deal with the pandemic and also, of course, the war that you are experiencing right now. So it must be a really, really challenging time right now for your students and teachers. So definitely, yeah, of course, as much as the teachers would also like to extend help, right, to students to provide counseling, but I'm sure your teachers are also struggling because of the war. So educational institutions in your country definitely should prioritize, okay, mental health, because I'm sure the teachers and the students are all struggling because of the war. And so if you have may I know if you have like your student and guidance counseling centers? Do you have like that? Or you can also come up with programs, counseling programs. You know, sometimes the students, they just need someone to listen, someone that would listen to them. So having these opportunities, counseling opportunities, it may not be that formal, okay, given the situation, given also the limitations, okay, of most probably in some countries there are not a lot of experts, okay, who can provide what's this counseling, but sometimes for the students they just need someone to talk to. And so if you can, a simple, sometimes we have Zoom meetings among our students wherein we call it, in our local dialect, we call it kumustahan, when you just ask yourself, how are you? Okay,
Uh-huh.
so yeah, for the students, if you can arrange for a meeting like that among students wherein they can share, okay, their struggles, okay, so that they would know that they're not alone, because I think that's very important right now, that students feel that they are not alone in this struggle, in their struggle, that there are people who can relate to them. Okay, so I think that would be a good start. Okay, having that kind of exchange among students. It can be done online, if not face to face. If it's not possible, it can be done online. And then students would just talk about how they are coping, okay, with their situation. It's good if you have an expert with you, so that they can provide, okay, expert advice, okay, to the students. Or you can even have a separate session among faculty members, okay, among teachers, because definitely there is a need for us to really feel, right, that we are not alone in this, in our situation, in our difficult situation. So the simple talking with one another, okay, in this kinds of, we do that, especially during the pandemic. So we would schedule um, a meeting, an informal meeting, wherein faculty members, would talk, and also students with their teachers. So not to talk about school, not to talk about, the lesson, but more on how they are doing, how they are feeling right now. And then they can share also their fears, okay, their anxieties, create that safe space, okay, among your students. So I think that can be, that's simple, but it can make a difference.
Thank you. Thank you for your
You're welcome. I hope I
recommendations.
answered your question.
Mhm. Thank
And I
you.
hope you're all doing well there. We all pray for the safety, okay, of your people.
Thank you.
Any other question? Any other question or any other support or any other intervention somebody wants to have? Doctor, related to the question which has just been answered by you, I have my submission, brief submission, quickly. In fact, there are tremendous studies on the war situation and war psychology
Mhm.
in the previous context, in, in the wars which have happened in the past, especially the First World War, Second World War, all that.
Mhm.
But recently, if we see, uh, there were the certain countries in Asia and Africa which were war ready.
Mhm.
But because the Western world has not supported much on, in fact, the Western world, especially the America, was involved in such most of the wars
Mhm.
perpetrated on many countries like Vietnam, you see, like Afghanistan, Iraq, and Libya, etc. So, and we all know that these, particularly the America and Europe, they are politically in the controlling position on the funding systems also.
Mhm.
So the universities ultimately also are dependent on the global funding systems, and the funding flows only where these superpowers do have the interests. So it is a very tricky and political issue when where this funding for this war studies, particularly on these issues which you have been talking, uh, this funding is flowing, or where to flowing, it is going. So in context of the West Asian countries, where the for decades they have been, struggling with the wars, and recently the Yemenis and this, Philippines is, Palestine is these are the lands, and many African countries too. So, but but there are a lot of funding for the weapons, etc., but not for these concrete things, how the human being is suffering.
Mhm.
But
Unfortunately.
coming to Ukraine, because having tremendous support from the Western world, especially the Europe and America, so we are very pretty sure that there is a immense funding right now, especially from the European Union and America. So I think if the universities, first of all, in Ukraine, the situation is that the people are trying to save their lives. First of all, that is the first priority, and I'm in direct contact with so many universities here.
Mhm.
I'm aware that many universities have displaced, and the teachers, the staff, administrative staff, they all have, displaced.
Mhm.
Majority, at least, some universities have completely vacated. They have deserted, and some have been shifted to other campuses. I mean, one university has shifted to the other university. So now in one campus, there are the two universities existing, or three universities existing. So this is the crisis situation wherein the people are simply trying to save their lives. That is the first
Mhm.
priority. And even people are not able to write the research papers.
Yeah.
If they want to write, I mean, they are not able to concentrate, because every time, even if there is no bombing happening, there are the alarms. People are
Mhm.
hiding for many, many hours, 6 hours, 7 hours, 5 hours in a day or night. They are not able to sleep, and that is the biggest stress they do have. What to talk of the students and the studies? Even in the normal life, the people do have the tremendous stress. They are not able to sleep over the nights, and the next day, if you don't sleep this night, or you sleep only 1 or 2 hours, what will you do tomorrow? You will do nothing. Your head will be, revolving all the day, and you will be sick. If and this is perpetually happening every day, then definitely you will become sick.
Mhm.
So this is, I think, these are the crises, and first of all, people are just trying to escape from this crisis or manage the crisis somehow.
Mhm.
And probably tomorrow, obviously, there are plenty of scopes, and there won't be any deficit for the funding for studying such things. I hope, but at the moment, personally, I am afraid that anybody is able to concentrate even to make any
Mhm.
project proposal.
Mhm.
Because for getting funding, you need to write something, some proposal. Then only you can get any kind of the resource from outside. So this is just my understanding and an opinion on this issue. Although there could be a collaboration, cooperation,
Mhm.
but I don't see the Asian countries do have these war studies on
Mhm.
psychology, on particularly on psychology. They may have the studies impact of the war
Mhm.
on the resources, on the people's lives, on the human rights, this and that. But psychological studies, I am afraid there are many in the Asian countries, because of Asian countries and African countries, they lack the funding for the resources. Even
Mhm.
universities do not have the resources to study very innovative things, and very only the students do, under a compulsion, students do a small projects, but that those are not very reliable studies, we should say.
Mhm.
Thank you very much.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you for those insights.
if not any other question, we can conclude, because we are already completing 1.5 hours for this lecture, and I have this experience that this is the longest lecture we have had.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you very much to everyone for staying until the very end. Thank you.
Okay, any question? We are closing it. Okay, thank you, doctor, especially your Dean of the School of Public Affairs, Professor Rovina. She had spared her time to start this program and then also introduce you to all of us. So thank you, Professor Rovina. We will definitely be in touch in the future and double speak. I think you have the second lecture also, you know. When is it?
Yeah, there's one. Sometime October.
Okay,
Time
okay.
October, yeah.
And we will also fix another in November, one more. Okay.
Yes,
Yes.
yes. Okay.
Okay, thank you so much,
Thank you.
both of you and your university, your faculty, and your institute. Thank you so
Mm,
much again.
all right.
Thank
Stay
And
safe to everyone. Yes.
yeah, and all the audiences. Thank you,
Okay.
especially Ukrainian colleagues. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Arjumin.
Bye bye.
Okay. Bye-bye.
you for argument.